You know what's strange? When I ask traders why they keep losing, even though they're following all the rules, most of them look down for a second before they answer. Like they're searching for a reason that makes sense, but deep down, they already know it doesn't. They say things like, I followed my plan. I didn't overtrade. I managed risk. And then they pause. Because if they did everything right, why did everything still go wrong? That question is what brought me here, to talk to traders who did it right and still failed. Traders who obeyed every checklist, respected every stop loss, journaled every trade, and yet ended every week the same way. Confused, exhausted, and slightly more broken than before. So I sat with them, not to judge, not to correct, but to listen. And what they told me, what they revealed between the lines, exposed one of the deepest paradoxes in trading. You can obey every rule and still disobey your structure. Let's unpack that. The first trader I spoke with, we'll call him Marcus. Marcus is disciplined, meticulous, the kind of trader you'd assume was built for success. His charts are clean, his notes are perfect, his backtests could pass for scientific research, and yet he hasn't been profitable for 3 years. When I asked him what's missing, he shrugged. I don't know. I've removed emotion. I follow my rules. I don't chase trades anymore, but somehow it's like the market still knows how to hurt me. I told him, maybe it's not your rules that are failing. Maybe it's the spirit behind them. He tilted his head. What do you mean? And that's where it started, the moment you realize that rules can become prisons. Because when a trader builds rules without identity, they build walls, not foundations. Marcus was trying to be consistent, but he was consistent with confusion. He had built obedience without understanding. Every trade he took was technically correct, but structurally disconnected. There was no thread holding it together, no internal architecture that said, this is who I am as a trader. So even though he was following the right things, he was doing it for the wrong reasons. Out of fear, not clarity. Out of reaction, not authorship. And when fear drives your structure, even discipline becomes self-sabotage. Then there was the second trader, Alina. Her story hit different because she wasn't just following rules, she was worshiping them. She told me, I've watched every risk management video. I never risk more than 1%. I backtest. I journal. I meditate before trading, but I'm still inconsistent. I asked, what does your model say about that? Silence. She blinked, then whispered, I don't have a model. I just follow what's proven to work. There it was, the quiet confession. She wasn't trading from structure. She was trading from imitation. Rules without a model are like rituals without belief. You go through the motions, but there's no transformation. See, Alina thought discipline was structure, but discipline without design is just repetition, and repetition without identity only reinforces confusion. She didn't realize that following someone else's proven system meant she was outsourcing her intuition, her ownership, her internal compass. So yes, she was disciplined, but she was never authentic. She was trading with borrowed conviction. The third trader, Daniel, he laughed when I asked him how long he's been following his system. 6 years, he said, and I've perfected every rule. I know exactly when to enter, when to exit, when to cut losses. But are you profitable? I asked. He smiled, but his eyes didn't. Barely. When I dug deeper, I found something hidden beneath the surface. Every time Daniel followed his plan, he did it with quiet resentment, because his plan wasn't built by choice. It was built by trauma. He told me, I designed it after losing everything once. Every rule I made was to avoid pain. That hit me. Because what happens when rules are born from pain? They don't guide you, they guard you. And when trading becomes about self-protection instead of self-expression, you'll always trade from fear of loss, not intention of gain. So Daniel wasn't following his structure, he was obeying his past. And that's when I realized something universal. Every trader who follows all the rules but still loses has one thing in common. They built systems to control outcomes, not to reveal understanding. Let me tell you about the fourth trader, Jade. Jade trades beautifully. Her charts are minimalist, her mindset calm, her record consistent. She journals like a professional athlete, but she kept hitting the same wall. She'd win for weeks, then lose everything in a spiral of bad decisions. When I asked why she thought it happened, she said, I think I just lose focus. But no, what she lost wasn't focus. It was identity retention. You see, trading rules don't stabilize you. Structure does. And structure is not about what you do, it's about how you think. When your identity as a trader is not integrated into your behavior, then your good days and bad days are just luck wearing different moods. Jade was following the rules, but her nervous system didn't trust them yet. She had intellectualized structure but hadn't embodied it. And until the nervous system believes the design, the mind will always default to emotion under pressure. So she wasn't failing from a lack of discipline. She was failing from a lack of neural trust. The fifth trader, Amir. His issue was subtle but devastating. He said, "I do everything by the book, but the moment I hit a drawdown, I start questioning everything." And that's the death of structural psychology, when doubt reappears every time data doesn't validate you. You can't build consistency if your conviction depends on confirmation. Amir's problem wasn't that his rules didn't work. It's that he didn't have a philosophy holding them together, a framework to explain why the system should be trusted even when it hurts. Because there will be pain, there will be drawdowns, there will be moments when the market humbles you. And when that happens, it's not your rules that keep you grounded, it's your philosophy. The rules tell you what to do. The structure tells you why it matters. And when the why is missing, every what collapses under pressure. After talking with these traders, I started seeing patterns that went deeper than technique. They all had rules. They all had discipline. They all had structure, on paper. But they lacked structure in motion. They lacked a living connection between design and execution. And that's when I realized something most traders never want to hear. Rules can't make you consistent if your identity remains inconsistent. Following a rule without understanding its origin creates internal conflict. You'll obey the action but resist the meaning, and conflict kills probability. It's not the market that punishes you. It's your own dissonance between what you say you believe and what you actually trust under pressure. Let me make it personal. Every trader I spoke with was chasing an external version of order because internally, they still operated in chaos. That's why most of them kept refining systems instead of refining themselves. They didn't need new rules. They needed new alignment. They were trying to fix a structural problem with behavioral bandages, and you can't heal architecture with discipline. You heal it with design. Let's pause for a moment. If you're listening to this right now, and you're that trader, you follow everything right but still lose, then you're not broken. You're just misaligned. Your behavior might be obedient, but your identity is still fragmented. And what fragments identity? Confusion between rule-based obedience and structure-based authorship. One is mechanical, the other is intentional. Rules say, do this, don't do that. Structure says, understand why and then become it. One can be memorized, the other must be internalized. And that's why your results haven't changed, because you've been treating trading as a series of correct actions, not a reflection of your designed cognition. The truth? Markets don't reward discipline. They reward structure. Discipline without context is just controlled chaos. It looks calm, but it's still reactive. Structure, on the other hand, is calm by design. It's predictability born from intentional philosophy. That's what most traders are missing, the philosophy behind their method. Because when you don't understand the philosophy, you can't sustain the psychology. I remember telling Marcus something that made him pause mid-sentence. I said, "You don't need better discipline. You need better definition." He frowned. Definition of what? Of yourself. Because every rule you follow comes from an identity you've built, whether consciously or not. And when that identity is unclear, your rules will always be inconsistent in effect, no matter how perfect they seem in form. So if you've been asking, why do I still lose when I'm doing everything right? Ask yourself these 5 deeper questions instead. 1. Whose rules are these? Did you build them or did you borrow them? 2. What emotion created them? Fear or intentionality? 3. Do these rules serve my structure or substitute for it? 4. Have I trained my nervous system to trust this framework? 5. Do I understand the philosophy behind my process? Because if the answer to any of those is no, then your loss is not financial, it's structural. And here's the paradox of maturity in trading. The higher you evolve, the less you need rules, because structure takes over. Structure is what remains when rules become instinct. It's when your design becomes identity. It's when you no longer try to do the right thing, it's just who you are. Every consistent trader I've ever met didn't talk much about rules. They talked about rhythm, structure, identity, and trust. They didn't follow systems. They became them. That's the shift. You see, the traders I spoke with weren't failures. They were prototypes of progress. They were living examples of what happens when the external framework evolves faster than the internal one. And that's why they were losing. Not because their system was wrong, but because their self wasn't yet designed to hold it. The market was never testing their setups. It was testing their structure. And until that structure becomes intentional, the results will remain accidental. So where do you go from here? Stop chasing more discipline. Stop rewriting the same rules with different words. Stop trying to obey what you don't understand. Instead, define your structure. Ask yourself, what do I believe about the market? What is the philosophy that governs my decisions? What internal logic keeps me stable when outcomes shift? Because that's what separates rule followers from intentional traders. One operates from memory, the other operates from design. And that's where the rebellion begins. Not in breaking the rules, but in rebuilding the reason behind them. When I left those interviews, I realized I wasn't listening to traders. I was listening to reflections of my own past. Moments when I too obeyed everything correctly, but still couldn't find peace in the process. Because the market doesn't respond to correctness, it responds to congruence. And once you become internally congruent, once your philosophy, process, and psychology align, the rules fade. You stop chasing the next fix. You stop fearing the next loss. You stop needing permission to trade intentionally. That's when you start trading from authorship, from structure, from truth. So if this hits you today, then maybe it's time to stop calling yourself a disciplined trader and start becoming a designed one. Because discipline keeps you within boundaries, but design builds the world you want to live in. And maybe that's why you've been losing even when you've been doing everything right, because you've been living by someone else's map, not your own. So rewrite it, redesign it, rebuild it. Not from emotion, but from intentional structure. Because here's the real secret I learned from all those conversations. You don't need more rules. You need a model that reminds you who you are. And that's the rebellion worth leading. If this message found you, it means you're ready for more than motivation. You're ready for structure. Stay intentional. Stay awake. And remember, the market doesn't test your strategy. It tests your structure. Welcome to Trading Rebels.